Hello and welcome to the podcast, Hugh.
Hi.
If that's your real name.
That is, well, that's what they call me.
What's your last name?
MacPhail.
MacPhail. So you're a huge MacPhail.
Yeah. Even teachers would say that when I failed tests.
And what's Hugh short for? Like Hugh,
Nothing.
Hugh.
It's not
Hugh Grant?
not Hubert.
Hubris?
Hubris.
Or Hugh Jackman?
No. I do say that so people understand what I'm saying because someone thought my name was Cube in a club once.
Cube?
Yeah, because I was like, Hugh, and they're like, Cube? Cube, that's a cool name, Cube. So,
Were you in a sort of black orientated club? That's probably why they thought you were called Cube. Or was it a university union, was it?
It was Sneaky Pete's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can't imagine someone thinking your name's Cube.
She's a chef, though. She's Australian. So,
Oh, okay.
So the combination of two crazy kind of people together, it makes it double crazy.
And MacPhail, is that's Scottish, is it? Yeah.
It is.
It sounds like it's quite posh, though. So.
No, my dad's from Glasgow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So.
It's not a MacPhail then.
They're from all the way up north in Lewis, Harris.
All right. Okay.
No, Uist.
Uist.
That's where my family's from.
You don't know though.
Yeah, not really. I've been there a couple of times.
So that's the islands off the coast of Scotland. Yeah. And were you brought up there?
No.
Oh.
Okay. I was born in France.
Oh, really?
And
this is where it gets interesting.
That's where it gets very complicated. So my mom's Canadian.
Okay.
From Saskatchewan, which is the middle of nowhere in Canada, where it's so flat that you can see the horizons curve.
The curve of the Earth.
Yeah. It's like that's how flat it is. Yeah.
Which does or does not exist depending on who or where you come from. If you're a flat earther, then
definitely there's just bullshit. They obviously just need to move to Saskatchewan, which is no other reason to go there.
So your mum's Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then my dad's from Glasgow.
Okay.
But I was born in France.
Ah.
And I grew up in Belgium, Finland, and Italy.
Ah.
Yeah.
Like how did that happen?
Just moving around.
Okay.
For my dad's job.
Was he military or?
EU.
Okay.
Yeah, it's worse.
What's the EU?
Not much for long now. He just works for like different EU agencies. Had to move around, different people.
That's crazy though.
Just a civil servant.
So you were born in France. Which part?
Metz.
Okay.
It's in Lorraine, which is in the east.
And did you spend any time in France?
Yeah, 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're essentially French.
No.
Ugh.
I used to be French, but then they.
How can you used to be French?
Well, I used to.
Is that because of the EU?
No, I'm Irish and Canadian citizenship wise, and then I was born in France, so I was French automatically.
Okay.
And then when I wanted to become British, the French were like, "No, you can be French or you can be British." And we're like, "Okay, cool, bye." And that was it.
Shit, the British are coming.
So yeah, you can't have as many. I think they have a limit of like 3.
Can you speak French then?
Yeah, I can speak French.
Well, does your mum speak French as well? Obviously, is she French Canadian or
no? She's just Canadian.
The boring
kind. She can speak French though. Everybody in my family can speak French.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah,
but not because she's Canadian.
No, that is not French. I mean, it is, but it's funner French.
Right.
It's nicer France.
Okay, so then you just traveled through Europe. That must be a crazy experience. At the age you were at, I assume you're probably between 0 and 10 at that point.
Yeah. Well, okay. Last time I moved was 18 when I moved here, and then 13, and then 11, and then I don't know what else. It was a few other times.
So what's the longest you stayed in one place?
7 years was in Belgium, in Brussels,
right,
which was good.
That's crazy though. Yeah. I take it they speak French there.
Yeah. In Brussels, they speak mostly French.
You just basically brought up speaking French the whole time.
Unfortunately, yeah.
How do you even speak English at this point?
Because my mum is very Canadian, like really, 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 really Canadian, like Laura. It's exactly the same.
Yeah. That person that sometimes frequents the podcast.
Yeah.
She's Canadian. In what sense though? Like what how would you say she was like really Canadian?
Well, I have this accent.
Okay.
Even though I've never lived in an English speaking country.
Really?
because of my mum.
Insane.
And even though my dad is Scottish, I still have this accent. That's how Canadian she is.
That is insane. So did she make a point of sort of teaching you English?
Well, we did European schools, and I did, mostly European schools until Italy, where I started going to an Italian school, a local school, where I learned Italian as well.
It seems to be quite a good place to do that, actually. And I've known a few people that grew up in different countries within Europe, Portugal being one of them, and they went to an international school, and that was after spending like 4 years speaking Portuguese in a normal Portuguese school.
Nice.
And it was kind of like a relief to go to an international school where people spoke English.
Yeah.
But I guess that makes you sort of adapt and learn the language properly. You know, you don't really get that over here. That's one of the downfalls of probably the British school system, is that what else would we learn? You know, like we are, like English is the main, one of the main languages spoken, you know, the one that everyone speaks to communicate when they're sort of stuck for a language.
Yeah.
But we don't do it. Like French and English, we barely know English. French and German was the main one when I was at school, and people they never really learned it because they didn't need to. There was no sort of exchange things going on, so people just didn't learn it properly. But I guess being there and being immersed in that culture, you have to learn it. Very
well, especially in places like France and Italy where nobody speaks English. You learn really fast because you will have no choice, basically.
Are they? I think, have I heard like like in France they're quite sort of stuck up about learning English or speaking it. Would that be true?
Well, I mean, they kind of just don't learn it very well. They have for me, I find all school systems teaching languages are terrible.
Yeah.
Except for like a few where they're really well funded or something. But generally, if you learn a language in another country, like if you learn English when you grow up in France, you'll speak shit English. And if they don't speak English very well, then they'll probably just not try to speak English at all if they don't want to like embarrass themselves or something like that. Like Japanese people, even if they know 70% English, they won't speak to you in English. They'll just say, I don't understand. Because if they don't speak 100% English, then they won't try at all.
That's funny. Like, obviously, that's kind of representative of how most people think of the Japanese. You know, like, even if they know 70% of a language, they're too shy to sort of, you know, do it properly.
They'll just be like, nope, don't understand. Leave me alone.
Do you speak English? No.
I don't understand you.
That's funny. So, yeah, you spent 7 years in Belgium? Yeah, and then where did you go from there?
Finland for 2 years.
Finland, that's crazy. So obviously they don't speak French there, do they?
But they speak English perfectly, which is very frustrating because you speak to them in Finnish and they go, oh, you're English, cool. I can practice my English with you, even though they are like bilingual English, and then you can't get a word of Finnish in, and they just refuse.
That's the same with all the sort of Scandinavian countries as well. That on my travels, the thing that sort of came out most is that they all know English perfectly, probably better than I do, and they always just use you as an excuse to speak it like you're saying. Like, you know, I stayed with 2 Swedish guys when I was in Austria for 6 months, and they just like the best English I've ever heard. I mean, they would sometimes get some stuff wrong, like when we would get drunk.
Yeah.
And then we'd be like so hungover the next day, and one of the guys I was staying with, Johan, would be like, I got so pounded last night. And I was like, I don't think that's the right.
It doesn't work in English.
And he asked someone for some thongs, but he meant like a pair of pliers, which is called tongs in Europe.
Yeah.
But he said it thongs in English. So he was going around at his job asking for thongs, and no one was going to tell him. Like, he just looked at me when he started to realize what he was saying, and he was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And it's like, it's so funny just to leave you to say it. He asked the boss as well.
Look at him.
But they just speak 10 times better than the rest of us. And they had like mostly like a tinge of an American accent to their English, because I think they learn it mostly from movies and like gaming and stuff. You know, how people watch like on Twitch as well. That's a big one for people to learn. because they watch games that people play online, and then they're speaking in English. So a lot of the sort of big guys are sort of American, so they learn with a sort of twang to it. It's weird, you know, and you forget that they can't speak the same way. Like they can't see how you structure your sentence the same way that when they're talking. So and because they speak so fluently, but sometimes they don't understand it, you'll say something back to them and they just don't get it, and you're like, why don't you get this?
You speak better English than me.
You speak perfect, but it's the sort of, they don't know the sort of ins and outs of the English behind it to get to that point. So usually you end up sort of with cross wires, which is confusing because they speak better English than you do.
Especially if you use Scottish vocabulary. It's very amusing with people who've learned English in other countries or learned American English.
Yeah.
And then you say something Scottish and they're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Some people don't even think you're speaking a real language. Yeah. I mean, I lived in Louisiana for a year and a bit. I went to high school there.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I played American football. People are probably sick of hearing this. But, my friends, at least, not people on the podcast. And yeah, like they just thought I was speaking, like I was making up a language when I was talking. And they would always get me to say funny things like tutti frutti, like in a Scottish accent. It sounds so funny. Like they would be like tutti frutti.
Bottle.
Yeah.
Like in what's that movie called? Love Actually. You must have loved your Scottish accent though there.
Oh man, it got me in so many into so many situations that were funny, but it was brilliant, you know. There was one time, I've never really told this story, but my nephew by marriage was the same age as me. And we started to hang out because we were into the same things. But we went to this sort of party, and it was a proper sort of cholo gangster party that was there. Because he looked Mexican, but wasn't. Like he was just sort of had a bit of French in his family, so he looked like kind of slightly, I don't know, somewhere in the line he looked like sort of Arabian somehow. So he kind of blended into this party. So they always just like thought he was like Mexican or something. And I'm like the whitest guy that you'll probably meet, and I go to this party and I'm like, I don't know if I still had my long hair because I used to be like a proper mosher, and if I had just arrived, I still had my long hair. And I walk into this party and it's all these guys with like their top button like done, and then the rest of the shirt like undone with white t-shirt underneath, and they're all sitting on the couches drinking like 40 ounces, you know, like a stereotypical cholo party. I don't even know if that's like racist or not, but and one guy who was like about 50 with a sort of like really sort of, he had like a military haircut, topless, but like a really shit tan that had affected his skin. Like he looked really like a leather handbag. And he had these khaki shorts on, and that was it. And he was just looking at everyone, like punching the air, like just at this party. He was crazy. And he came up to me and he was like speaking in, I don't even know what language it was, but he was like, da-da-da-da-da. And my nephew walked past him. He didn't hear him saying them. So he was basically threatening me to get out. And I was like, Corey, can you tell this guy, like, I'm with you? You know, because you can't just bring a stranger to a cholo party, you know. And he's like fuming. And then once Corey said like, oh, he's with me, everyone was the nicest person you could have met, honestly. But up until that point, I thought I was going to die for sure. I was only like 16.
Fucking hell.
And they were all like just looking at me when I walked in, like, who's this white boy? This very white boy. Have you ever had any sort of situations that you sort of, when you've moved somewhere, that you've been uncomfortable or thought like you were going to die?
I don't know. Italy's pretty chill. Like they're very noisy
not
people,
anymore.
But they're well, not anymore. No, now they're all a bunch of fascists. But no, they're very noisy and they can be very vocal about disagreements and stuff. But they don't do anything. They're very peaceful, so they can make a lot of noise, but they don't really. That's it. But then there's a lot of Romanians in Italy, and they are more the opposite. They're a bit more chilled out.
Yeah.
But they'll fuck you up.
Yeah.
So you can never tell the difference because Italians and Romanians are like, they both speak Latin languages. You know, they pretty much, it's the same.
Yeah.
Romanians can learn Italian immediately.
Yeah. Can they? Is that what
Pretty
happens?
much.
Really?
Like, they're pretty fast at learning it.
Okay.
Because it's both Latin language. I mean, it's totally different. I don't really understand it, but if I read it, I can get by pretty easily.
Yeah.
But they didn't find too much difficulty. But
it's like Spanish and Italian. Like they both have the Latin root, so you can pick out
between. Yeah. And if you already know one, you can learn the other pretty fast. But you can never tell the difference. So you can be at a club night and shit goes down and it's a bunch of Italian guys who don't do anything, but then you don't know if they're a bunch of Romanian guys and they start beating the shit out of everybody. So you're like, cool.
Do you know how you tell the difference? Hand gestures. See who's making this for all you guys on the YouTube.
I picked it up too, though, when I lived there. Like, if you live there for at least as much as I did, you end up doing the hand gestures all the time. Yeah,
that's funny.
You do it. Like, I've lost it now, which is good, but sometimes I do it. But when I was there, I was just like, babbity boo. So,
kind of Dr. Zoidberg. Do you get that reference?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've watched Futurama.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Like 3 episodes.
I just thought with your age, you might not. Was it still on air when you were watching it?
In Italy, what they do is I've never had television in my life, so if I watch something, I would watch it myself.
Oh, okay.
But in Italy, what they do is because they don't give a shit about television, even though it's like the most watched thing. People watch it all the time. It's like channels where they play series beginning to end on repeat.
Really?
Forever. So you've got like Dragon Ball Z, or whatever, Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, that works. Yeah. Dragon Ball Z. It's been running for like 30 years on TV every day, beginning to end. As soon as the last episode hits, new episode next day.
That's crazy.
And then the same thing with Futurama. Same thing with The Simpsons. So you go through everything. They just buy the rights for one program and then just play it forever.
No wonder fascism's coming back into power because
like
they're like, take over the
TV
TV stations. Be like, fuck this. The monotony of this.
But it is Berlusconi who owns all the television channels too, so he doesn't really,
I was watching,
people entertained.
Like most of my sort of international news comes from Vice, which I hate to say because I really despise what Vice has become, And I was watching one this morning and it was basically talking about the rise of this fascism in Italy that's happening, and there's a resurgence and people are openly saying that they're fascist now in Italy. And as someone who's from the UK, it's strange to hear people on the street just saying, yeah, I'm a fascist, and it doesn't sort of connect with me, but it seems to be, it's crazy that that's something that's coming back, after everything that the world went through during World War II,
Yeah.
It's crazy that in 2018 that's something that would come back, and it's scary because it's kind of reflective of World War II because what was going on in Germany at the time when Hitler was coming into sort of the Nazi party was there was an extreme left and an extreme right.
Yeah,
and that was a reaction to the
Yeah.
extreme left, I guess. And that's why he started to become, prominent, because he was saying things that sort of related to what the common man was going through in relation to this extreme left.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what pushed them further. And I'm not saying that was why we have, fascism and Nazism is the extreme left, but
well, it's coming back again now.
Yeah.
It's just a total repeat of the 20s and 30s. Yay! It's great. World War II again, genocide. I'm looking forward to it. Exciting times.
How long did you spend in Italy?
5 years.
Okay. Did you go to school there?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you learn anything about the sort of history of Italy and in terms of the war as well?
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, it's really big. But the thing is that's the funny thing is that people who are old enough to have been through the war are like, fuck that. Fuck fascism.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever again. And it's all the people who were born after the war who had no idea what went on, and they just kind of cover it up a bit. And they're like, nah, it was cool, man. Like Mussolini, there was loads of jobs, there was no junkies, no homosexuals. It's fantastic. I mean, it's exactly what we need. But on the other hand, there was so many people that I knew who went to school who were diehard Stalinists.
Yeah.
Like actual Stalinists.
What?
As in, like, not just communists.
They still... they're around still?
Yeah, well, they would just be like, there were people and they would divide themselves, so there'd be left-wing students, and they'd divide themselves between Trotskyists, Stalinists, and Leninists, and it was just all, and they would fight each other. Yeah, Leninists and Trotskyists, it's really funny. And then the Stalinists, there's a few that I met, and they're just like, I'm like, so you do know that, like, 50, 60 million people were killed under Stalin, right? And they're like, yeah, but it was kind of worth it. Like, ends justifies the means, totally. Like, it was a utopia. And it's like, I don't think
it's crazy.
Not when you live there. It's as soon as people haven't lived through it, all the old people die.
Well, we have a short memory as a species.
Yeah.
Like, it seems to be 30 years max. Maybe we sort of remember what we've been through, and then it just
doesn't matter.
It comes
anymore.
back, and it's crazy. Like, how do we stop that from happening? This is why the Bible is still a huge thing, because it was made in the year like 2,000 years ago. That's why there was no social media. There was nothing to sort of say, well, Jesus didn't exist, or Jesus wasn't here
Fake
on that
news.
day.
Fake news.
There was none of that, and it survived 2,000 years. Imagine, it's crazy that we do have media and all this thing, and it still doesn't sort of stop these things from coming back up. We know what happened 70 years ago. You can watch anything on Netflix. There's
it
loads
doesn't mean anything anymore.
If it's not something that you've been through, even then, some people can have Stockholm syndrome to whatever they've been through, and that's crazy.
Well, something like, for example, colonialism now is okay, basically. Like, people are against it, but there's like a lot of people who are just like, yeah, but I mean, it was kind of good. It wasn't that bad. We brought civilization to the world. Whereas if it was viewed in the same way as World War II was, people would be a lot angrier about it. But we've forgotten, because it was so long ago, that it doesn't matter anymore.
People seem to forget that the real bad things that have been done under the British flag as well, like extremely bad and negative things from the last 400 years. And people, even though it's in history, and a lot of people sort of just don't acknowledge it when you sort of bring it up as well. It's like, oh, well, that was so long ago.
Who
but
cares?
Even still, up until a certain point, it was still going on with, India and whatever. But it is insane that we sort of get to dictate the sort of the zeitgeist and the paradigm that's going in terms of history and how we remember it, because we're never sort of thought of as this terrible nation that sort of took over half the known world at some point, and made everyone a slave.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's glorified even now, even though, like, in Tasmania in the early 19th century, they would just like hunt the natives as sport. And that is still kind of like, the Australians are like, yeah, but it's cool. It's a good fun, good sport, man. Just fine. Barbecues and stuff.
And those some of the biggest travesties are going on against Aboriginals in Australia still. They're seen as a complete second class citizen.
Well, they weren't even considered sentient beings until like 1973, which is not that long ago.
And then there's a far right movement as well in Australia just now. This is crazy wherever we go. It seems like the world's polarized, and then respective rights seem to come up when there's this left movement, and it just seems like that's natural. Like, it happened during World War II, and it's happening now in America. France, it happened for a bit, I guess, before the elections. In Australia, this woman who was part of the Conservative Party, she was very against immigrants, but they have a really hard border. They just turn around to anybody. Yeah. Well, a hard border in terms of they have an ocean between them and anybody else.
But they also, don't let anybody in, even if, it's fucking mad.
And is that something you've ever experienced when you've been on your travels? Have you seen sort of racism and anything? I mean, you're 21, which is like, your sort of memories are quite recent. So have you seen anything like that?
Well, Finnish people are very monocultural, and they've been left alone forever until very recently. And nobody gave a shit about Finland. They were just like, they didn't have any contact. They were very unique people. The closest relatives are Hungarians.
Right. And
that was like 3,000 years ago, was when they were the same tribe or more. So they have this very, very, very homogeneous society, and only have received immigrants for the first time in the last 5 to 10 years, with like from Somalia and stuff like that. And they're like, no. They're not that like open aggressive, because they're still very decent people, but they're quite xenophobic. Not just if you're, not if you're like of any different race. It's just if you're not Finnish.
Yeah.
Basically, if you're not Finnish, even Swedish people, even people who are Finnish of Swedish origin who've been there since the Swedish Empire of like the 1600s, they still hate them for it now. And people get abused on like trams and public transport if they start speaking Swedish in public and stuff.
Really?
But apart from that, it's pretty cool. Italians, on the other hand, are extremely vocally racist, but they don't really do anything about it. But they complain a lot, and they are okay with saying whatever they want, and they're okay with saying I'm a fascist. They won't really be. It's not like they're gonna do what Americans do, which is go around and shoot people. But they'll talk about it.
Yeah, which is the best way. Yeah, I guess.
As long as they don't do anything, I'm fine with that. They can shout about as much as they want.
I think Mussolini talked about it as well. He ended up where he was. I think all these people were sort of good talkers. That's why they sort of got into position. If you strike a chord and utilize what's going on in the country at that time, you can sort of fast forward yourself in terms of your career. I think that's what's happening in Italy at this point. Is some of these far right people are utilizing. Was it the girl that died recently? She'd been like dismembered, put in a suitcase outside of it.
Yeah, she died of a drug overdose.
Yeah,
and
but
then
they
the
don't
guy,
know if it was a drug overdose or she was killed.
It was probably a drug overdose. But I mean, they don't know. But like, they're saying that he just outright killed her and chopped her up and put her in a suitcase when...
And he was, what, no, where was he from?
No, he was Nigerian.
Nigerian descent, yeah. And he was not a citizen.
Well, no, he'd come recently and was a drug dealer. And she was obviously a client of his who died in his, with him probably. And he was like, well, I don't want to get done for this. So chopped her up and put her in a suitcase, which is kind of, I don't know, like, it's very, very weird anyway. But then a guy went around and shot some people in town because he thought,
in response to that, it was a far right guy.
Far white guy.
That's basically it. That is a new term. That's a new term.
Alt-white.
Alt-white. Is that not Breaking Bad? Oh, Walter White. Alt-white. His alternative character.
We've got something going here. I think we should.
And so basically, these groups are capitalizing on her murder essentially, and they're saying she wouldn't have had the drugs if there wasn't immigrants or if they were in power, and there wouldn't have been these sort of migrants in if they were in power as well. So
and there wouldn't be drug dealers if they were in power.
Yeah,
and all
exactly.
This bullshit.
I mean, it's total crap.
Yeah,
but they're fast forwarding their own career by latching onto these sort of things that are happening.
Yeah, it's like really good rhetoric, and people listen to it, and they have a lot of airtime because all the TV is owned by Silvio Berlusconi, who's for right wing, so he can give airtime to even more right wing people and keep them away from left wing parties. Yeah, so.
Is there sort of a left as well in
but it kind of
Italy?
sucks.
Is it like Antifa's been there as well? Is that?
Oh, it's very big, but like they're kind of, I don't know, just all they kind of always have these spineless leaders who don't. Like, the thing is that...
What, on the left? No way.
But the problem is like...
Have you heard of Trudeau?
Well, he's not that spineless. He's pretty cool. He's nice. But,
yeah, he's nice. That's it.
But, no, but the thing is in Italy is that there's like, it doesn't matter if you're in left wing or right wing. Right. The goal is being in power so you can make as much money as you want. Right. So they don't give a shit whether right wing or left wing, like these right wing guys might come into power, but they're not going to pass any laws that are going to change anything. No. They're just coming into power just so they can be in the forefront, so they can have their glory and make some money. And it's so much corruption, they don't give a shit. Like all the way down, everything is underfunded because the only purpose of being elected is to make money. And they don't give a shit about policies. Nothing ever changes. But Italian policies have been the same, gradually changing tiny bit by tiny bit, but they've been exactly the same since 1946. Like it's taken that long for them to do anything different. Whether it's right wing or left wing parties, they both do nothing and let the country slowly descend itself into.
Yeah, it's stagnating.
Yeah,
like it's a country that's sort of left to sort of mold and rot, I guess. And I guess this is the people's response, is the left and the right to that as well. I think migrants or immigrants is just is inflamed that situation.
It's ammunition.
Ammunition. It's not something that's causing it. It's something that the people are already unhappy in that country, so they're using and utilizing these types of things to sort of do something about it. I mean, I understand that, but it doesn't mean that you should sort of chastise people based on their color or where they're from, you know. Especially if they've had to float to your country on the back of a door, you know.
Yeah. No, it's harsh. And they also have this whole thing of like, yeah, okay, cool, so we'll accept Syrians because they've actually got a war. Yeah. But we wouldn't want to accept Nigerians because they don't have a war. Or Bangladeshis. That was the worst thing. Because my mum used to work with refugees. She used to do like a sewing course with people who would come in from all these countries.
When she was living in...
No, now.
Oh,
she
now?
Just finished recently, yeah. So all
brilliant.
these people coming to Italy, they spread them out. The government does actually a fantastic job. They
in the UK?
Government. No, in Italy. They did. So they take them all in. They spread them out all over the country, everywhere. Yeah. In all communities, they have a house, or in a village, they have at least one house where they gesture, where they put migrants. But obviously, they try to mix them up as much as possible so that they don't, group up. It's
kind of like what they did in World War II with the Blitz kids. You know, they sent them out across the country, to different families. Yeah. To keep them safe, I guess, and to learn.
So she worked with them, but like, for example, if you're from Syria, you get in straight away because it's a civil war. Somewhere like Eritrea as well, but for example, Bangladesh has got a female prime minister, and it's a democracy.
Really?
Yeah,
I never knew that.
Or female president at least.
I never knew that.
Yeah, no,
that's crazy.
But the thing is even though Bangladesh is incredibly overcrowded, it is an ecological and economical disaster. And the people have to leave because you can't get a job, and they are starving to death, and they need to leave. It doesn't count as a war zone, and because it's a democracy, as much as it is, they send them back home. Or they don't send them back home. They just deny their rights and their papers, and they just leave them to float around the country with no papers. They can't get a job. They end up selling roses and stuff like that in restaurants, or selling drugs. So
that's insane. So they're pretty much in sort of limbo. They can't do anything.
They can't go home. They don't get a ticket home. They don't get any papers here. They can't leave Italy because the French are super, super, super serious on their border. Like when I went to Paris on the train, like French military police stopped the train on the border and went through it all, and everybody was all these people jumping out of the train trying to get across the border, and they were like, no, they arrest them all and then just send them back.
It's not something you think about. You just think of it in term, like it's something that America has to go through, and people jump in the border, but. Because we never see anything really here because we're in Scotland. You know, there's nobody swimming across from Amsterdam to get to Scotland.
And we'd like to see that.
You'd literally freeze before you got anywhere. But we're not close enough to England to sort of see them coming in through that way.
Yeah.
So you just think of it as an American problem, or a French problem as well.
Well, that's the thing, is that they just left it to the Italians, and Italy's already super like fucked up by itself, and then Austria was like, nope. Switzerland was like, hell no, and France was like, no. So they all stay in Italy, which I think is great, because Turin, for example, is an amazing city now. It's like super multicultural. There's people from everywhere. This whole it's such a great place to go and hang out.
And it has the shroud as well.
Yeah,
which is real.
Yeah, I mean,
no, I'm joking.
It's definitely bullshit. But you still have to wait 25 years before you can see it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Really? There's that
every
long?
Quarter century, they open up for one day or something like that.
That there, like when people put stipulations on seeing something that's maybe religious sort of artifact, is bullshit. Like, oh, you can see it every once of the blue moon rising over the fox and the hound, and when the eagle comes down and takes the wolf out of its nest, that's when you can see it.
In Italy, they have a very good way of saying that sort of thing. Once in a blue moon is every death of the Pope.
Oh, okay.
And it's fantastic. You're just like, yeah, we can get it done. Yeah, every death of the Pope. Yeah, it's
So basically, that's happened twice in the last 100 and odd years.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. It's a very good saying.
I love these sort of different expressions you get in these sort of cultures. Like I think a lot of Scottish sayings are strange to sort of even English people sometimes. I've tried to say some sayings to Laura, and she's Canadian obviously, and she just like, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, and I love those sort of sayings. It's the same with like Canadian as well. They have a lot of sayings that I was like, whoa, what do you mean by that? Even the word "a" at the end, but that is very Scottish though.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I found amusing is when when I first time I came to Scotland, I was like, oh, I'm Canadian, because I used to say I was Scottish in Italy because they can't tell the difference between accents, and it was fine. I could say I was Scottish; they wouldn't know any better. And it was less complicated. And then I moved to Scotland, and I realized I wouldn't get away with that. Yeah. And so I say Canadian, and they're like, oh, A, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure Canadian people say A because they all came from East Coast Scotland. That is where we get it from.
Exactly.
And you guys say it too.
Yeah. No, it totally is. Like
it's
when
100%.
And the way Laura says it, like when she says, "Oh, what about this, eh?" And I'm like, "You are just Scottish with an American accent." That's basically it.
It is. It is exactly that.
But I prefer the Canadians in general. I think they're on the whole, they're sort of on the level, I guess. Obviously, there's idiots, but I'm generalizing. You know?
They've got it good.
Nice. Have you been to Canada much?
I just went once.
Okay. Was that enough for you?
2 weeks in 2006, I think.
Okay.
It was pretty like, I don't know how to say. I've never been to a country like that. You don't understand. Well, for one, it was summer, and I was like, okay, Canada, yeah, it's not that hot.
That's
like
what I said.
40 degrees, and then the cars are huge.
Yeah.
Everything is huge. Yeah. Everything is like 3 times bigger, 4 times bigger, which was really weird. Yeah.
Like the streets in the main road in Scotland are just like a tiny sort of B road in Canada. Yeah. You know, it's crazy.
The motorway is just like 18 lanes.
And as an old, like when I used to skate when I was younger, it's like paradise for you to skate down the street, like even the sidewalk. Yeah. Because in Scotland, if you try and do that, like you'll end up smashing your knee or something because there's just
bins, and signposts, and cars, and bins, and people, and dogs, and people, and
dog
babies,
shit,
and dog shit. Yeah. I think the best thing was to happen in Canada was when my grandfather at the time had a really old Pontiac from the 70s.
Nice.
Like a really old shitty car. Like it was good. It was a nice car. It looked beautiful. It was amazing. But it would break down very often. Yeah. So we broke down one time when we were trying to get to Niagara, and we phoned a takeaway truck.
A taxi.
No, those what are those trucks called that take your car?
Oh, like a sort of. I'm not sure actually. Does anyone else in there know?
A tow truck. There we go. A tow truck. So we called the tow truck, and then and because Canadians are really nice, they were all stopping. And whenever someone would stop in like a normal car, my mom would be like, "Oh, here's the tow truck," because they're so huge. And she would walk up and she'd be like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here." And they were like, "Do you need a ride?" And she's like, "You gonna tow the car?" And they're like, "No, I'm just here to help if you need a hand." And she'd be like, "Oh, okay, cool. It's just a normal truck, right?" Looking nearly exactly the same for us.
Have you been to America before? No. Okay, so that was your first experience of sort of North America. Yeah, that is like when I went to Louisiana, I had the same experience. Like it was the first time I'd ever experienced being overwhelmed. I was only 16. I never really knew what that felt like up until that point. And when I went there, it was like, this is crazy. This is nothing like Scotland. But I enjoyed it. I loved it. And yeah, like everything's bigger. Like all the roads are bigger, the cars are bigger, even more so in America. And the people, the personalities are bigger as well. And I think Canada has the sort of all the best bits of America without the sort of them being
madness.
Yeah, without them being sort of psychotic.
Like when you go to Canada, you kind of think, yeah, it's just like everybody's nice. It's a different country, but you can still fit in really easily. Yeah. When my sister and my dad went to New York, they went in just last year. They met in New York because my dad was there for a conference in Washington D.C. And it's like you speak English. Everybody speaks English, but it is a foreign country. Yeah. Everything is different. They think differently. Everything is different, and you think it's not, and then you're really confused by the fact that they're just so weird and so foreign to you, even though you can communicate perfectly. Whereas Canadians are also cool all the time. So
that was one of the things that the people that I interacted with in Canada always said, like, how do you understand me when I speak? And I was like, why wouldn't I? Like, we have sort of American movies over there, so we can understand that accent slightly. Obviously, it's not American, but, you know, it's similar. And, yeah, they were like, do I have an accent to you? That's what they said to me. And I was like, well, of course. Like your accent isn't worldwide. You know, it's like not everyone has that accent. Yeah. And they always thought I had a really thick accent.
You're trying to like getting cash out, and it's like you put your card in, and it's like put in your zip code, and you're trying to put in your postcode in, and you're like, what the fuck is zip code? There's not enough space for my postcode. Why does the cash machine want to know my postcode? And then someone comes along, they're like, oh no, that's your 4-digit number
Yeah.
thing, and it's like, you mean a PIN code? Yeah.
The only experience of sort of mistaking this I had when I was in America was when it came to my dad. Now, my dad spent 50 years at that point in Scotland. You know, he was from Glasgow, so he had a very thick accent. And we went to McDonald's, and he went to the counter, and I told him my order, and he went away and got the order, came back with like just completely wrong order. Like, they just didn't understand anything he said. And I was like, this is not anything that I wanted.
Yeah, no, Canada was pretty easy to fit into, but I just went to Calcutta. Like, I just came back from Calcutta 2 weeks ago, and your idea of, I don't know, I haven't been that far away before. That's like the furthest I've been.
Yeah.
And I don't know, when you don't go, I haven't traveled that, like, I've traveled all over Europe, but Europe, where when you go from country to country, it's nearly the same. Like, you don't, it's not like you're like, oh my God, what the fuck? And then I had this idea of India, and all my friends have been to India, and they're like, yeah, man, it's like totally chilled out, and you can just like buy loads of Xanax in the pharmacy, and like everything's cool, and everybody's nice. And you go there, and it is the most insane shit ever. And you have like, I arrived there, and I was really jet lagged, and I was like having a panic attack on every street corner because there's like too many people everywhere. It's like a village of 16 million people, Calcutta.
That's
like,
crazy.
It's got that same amenities of a village, but it's
Yeah.
16 million people in it, and you're just like, yeah, that was the biggest culture shock for me by far.
Going to India.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was mad.
I mean, that is one that I've heard about. Some people embrace it, and some people are sort of put off by it. You know, because it is very different from the UK.
Well, but the thing about it was that I just didn't expect it. I was just like, yeah, I can do this. You know, I've been to Turkey, probably the same. No, definitely not. Like, nothing at all.
So what was sort of most jarring about it then?
Well, they just.
Sorry, can you come up to the mic?
People just like they have no consideration for well, like, human life is worth nothing. Everybody is starving and trying to make money, but they can't make enough money because it's like a super hyper capitalist society.
Yeah.
And it's like there's billboards everywhere because multinational companies have more GDP than the entire country does. So they buy out everything. It's just Coca-Cola this, Coca-Cola that, everywhere. Even the slums have got adverts on them.
That's crazy.
And like, everybody is struggling to survive, and their only goal is to make money and not starve to death because they need to feed their family. So they don't give a shit about anything else, and they'll work day and night. And you just see, like, when you go there on holiday with people who've never been there either, I'm sure it's nice because you don't have any idea. But my brother already lives there, so he was just like pointing out the things to me, and I was just like, oh yeah, barbed wire around people's houses because they want to keep poor people out. Oh yeah, armed guards and chauffeurs and all this, and it's like all the rich people.
That's crazy.
It's like a medieval society. It's like feudal. They live in huge castles and keep everybody out.
I wonder if that always existed in India, or is it a recent thing with the sort of disparity? Like, it's always been a poor country, but is there sort of more sort of wealth coming in now? Or
well, the thing is, in all countries, with globalization, that's what's happening. If you go to South Africa, it's the same thing. Any country where it's not even, like, especially in South Africa, people are like, oh no, it's just the white people who are rich and they're trying to keep the black people out. It's not. It's the disparity in all societies is nothing to do with race. It's just rich people and poor people, and the rich people want to keep their rich wealth, and they want to keep everybody else out. It's like keeping your privilege, whoever you are, and they just do that. It doesn't even matter. Like in India, they have this whole caste system, but now it doesn't. The caste system doesn't matter anymore. It's all to do with your. It's
underlying to the society still. Like, people still judge each other on their economic status, or even I think it's still there. Would you say, like?
Well, they do still have the caste system, but now it doesn't matter which caste you come from, as long as you have lighter skin, which means you don't spend time in the sun.
Okay.
Then and you've got money.
That's
basically
crazy.
If you've got darker skin, it means you work outside. If you've got lighter skin, so people they have umbrellas and they wear sun cream all the time to try and make themselves look whiter, lighter skinned, and they have parasols and they don't go outside. They wear full clothed things and gloves and shit all the time just so they can appear
to be upper
wealthier.
class.
Yeah, that's the only thing now.
Wow.
That means you've got money. And they treat and that was the thing. Like, we would go to restaurants and we'd be really nice to the waiters. There's hardly any restaurants actually, but like this is a really nice place we went to. Really nice, like, the guy explained everything. He was a fantastic waiter. And then you look over at the other table and he's serving them, and the people there are just like doing stuff like that and shouting at them and being like, it's been too long, and being really, really, really rude. You're just like
Westerners or
no, Indians.
Just them?
Yeah, they just. But it's all countries now. Like countries that have this disparity, they treat poor people like shit. So yeah,
it's a very strange country because you have this. It's sort of even magnified in that country because you have a country that is, in some respects, still developing and has extreme levels of poor, but on one hand has a space program.
Yeah,
you know,
and nuclear weapons.
How can those two things exist at the same time? Which is crazy, especially in 2018. I know I say that a lot, but it is something that's it's a weird thing that can be allowed to just happen, I guess. And I don't know why it still goes on, I guess.
It's just capitalism, man.
Don't get me started.
But it's the same with Russia as well. It's just you have these people who have a lot of money, who are always in power, and it just changes between them. It doesn't matter if it's right wing or left wing. If someone comes into power, they all know each other and they're all pals, and they probably have got marriage relations and things like that. And they all have the same amount of money, and they just keep it between them. They don't give a shit about anybody else, and that's how it stays. And that's how, and it just keeps getting further away.
Did you stay in one specific part of India when you were there?
Well, I was in Calcutta, and I did a tour of West Bengal, and I went down to Odisha as well. Which is just a bit further south, where you got loads of Hindu temples and stuff.
Did you go on the train system?
Oh my god,
it's supposed to be pretty crazy, isn't it?
It was. Well, the thing is that you can buy first class tickets for a tenner.
What?
Yeah,
that's like, first class.
Yeah, pretty much. You get food. You got like people you basically got waiters on your train, but the train system is the most used like transport there. The people don't fly. Flying is too expensive, but you can get like normal train ticket for like $5, going halfway across the country, 36-hour train journey or something like that for a $5.
Yeah,
and then you can get first class for a bit more, but people can't afford that.
No.
So, but even the people, when you go into first class, you see all the people who can afford first class, and it's more the same people, just all assholes.
That's crazy though. Like that's as cheap as it is for first class. Yeah, and you could pretty much, if you were sort of working remotely, you maybe had an online business, you could probably go to India and live like a king, you know.
Well, for example, doctors in India, so they earn 2 lakh a month, which is like £2,700 a year, but it's 200,000 rupees there a month.
Wow.
Which means you can do whatever you want. It is like earning £1 million a month here. That is what your purchasing power is.
Yeah,
basically, you can do whatever the fuck you want all the time, anytime.
That's insane. And you can only imagine the sort of human rights violations that goes on when someone's earning that sort of spending power in a country as a normal citizen, you know.
And
I mean, there must be something.
Guards, and drivers, and barbed wire, and castles, and all that stuff.
Castles in India,
basically castles. Like when you see people's houses, they're like palaces.
How did you find the food when you were there?
Well, there were some restaurants that were fantastic.
Yeah.
But they don't really do food. People don't go to restaurants. People can't afford to go to restaurants. So there's not this kind of restaurant culture. There's no bar culture either. No wine bars. No wine bars. Appalling.
But Indian wine is pretty terrible.
It is terrible. Yeah, it is. Actually, I had one good one, but the rest of it is awful.
Was it when you were in India?
Yeah, I bought some Indian wine. It was...
How much?
Well, the first bottle of wine we had was 300 rupees, which is like £2 something.
What? And
it was good. It was Sauvignon Blanc from Maharashtra. And then the second time we spent a bit more money, because I was like, well, if I spend a bit more money, maybe it'll be even better.
Yeah.
I bought a Viognier, and it was the worst thing I've ever drunk in my life. Like, really bad. But sometimes they must have good. They do Shiraz as well.
Yeah. I had one good Indian wine when I was in Portugal?
Really?
No, not Portugal. I was in Prague.
Prague. You were drinking Indian wine in Prague.
Well, I went to an Indian restaurant, and they were like, "Do you want some wine?" And I was like, "There's Indian wine on this menu." I'd never heard of it. And I was like, "What is this going to taste like?" But it was just big flavors, but they weren't really like amazing. Mm-hmm. You know, it's stuff that you've tasted before. Well, but it was good when you sort of tie it into India. You think, well, for where it's coming from, it is good. But yeah.
Well, the thing is that our way production wine is produced is often to do with, it's very seasonal, and they have totally different seasons. So I don't know how the hell they manage to organize themselves so that they do it, like they can make wine the same way that we do, when we've got winter, summer. No, we don't. Winter, spring, summer, autumn, whatever. They've got like the hot, dry season and wet season, but then in between is winters and summers too on the like fringe parts. And it's like, how the hell do you grow grapes in that time?
And obviously they get hit with the monsoon as well.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got like the wine is like grapes. Super like really like fruity and really intense. Like, 'cause it's obviously if it's in the hot season when they grow it, then it means that they've got loads of time to produce sugar, and their wine is like so sweet and so intense and really high in alcohol. And I suppose they like it, so they love drinking.
Is that something indicative of their wine that's sort of high alcohol? Is it?
Well, it's like really,
or is it generally
really
just,
like intense, unbalanced flavor? It's like everything is like a kick in the face.
It's funny how the taste for wine changes from place to place. I mean, there's a huge sort of market now and an uptick in the wine in China, and it's usually these sort of big sort of, you know, Cabernet Sauvignon, whatever, you know, the big sort of, you know, just flavor, but not really delicate or something that people would say in the Western world that is a sort of good wine. Yeah. But they're just cheap. But they think that that's, like, they think it's amazing though. Like, there's a huge sort of, I think it's one of the biggest buyers of wine is like China or something like that. Definitely.
But they don't really care. Like, it's just mostly, for now anyway, it's mostly to do with the status symbol of having a bottle of wine on your table. So people in China, they'll buy like Chateau Mouton Rothschild, but they don't hear someone goes older because it's meant to be drunk from like the 80s is when now it's good. But they don't give a shit. So they'll buy like a 2015 one just because they've got a bottle on the table that says Chateau Mouton Rothschild, and they don't give a shit about what it tastes like, and it's totally undrinkable. Yeah. But it's just there. So it's like, I've got this. Look at it.
I wonder, what's the sort of weirdest place you've had a wine from then?
I think Tunisia. Right. Tunisian wine. Like, Indian wine obviously is very weird, but it's kind of like, that's extremely novelty. But the Tunisian wine I had was terrible.
Really?
It was so bad. Yeah, we were in Paris and we were in this lovely restaurant. It was an amazing Tunisian restaurant, and the guy was like, "Ah, vous voulez du vin tunisien?" Okay, I probably said it in English, but and then
what did you say?
He was like, "Do you want some Tunisian wine?" Because we wanted to order wine. We were like, "Well, we're in France, you know, we might as well." And he was like, "It's really good, Chateau Carthage, really, really good." And we were like, "Okay, cool, we'll go for it." Yeah, it was the worst thing ever. It was like drinking tar, like super.
And it's funny when something's, I mean, all sort of taste in wine is sort of subjective, but there are going to be shit wines on the whole and some amazing wines on the whole. And it's funny to see these guys try and sell like a wine that is just terrible, but you know, they go through the whole process of like, you know, here's the bottle, and then, you know, pour your wine. It's like, why would you even have faith in this wine? It's terrible.
I mean, probably it was quite good for the novelty of it, because I'm sure he enjoys selling Tunisian wine because it's a Tunisian restaurant. But yeah, that the taste is, what was the word? The taste, the gustibus non discutandum est, is taste. You can't argue about taste. Okay. But there's some things that are just bad taste. Yeah. That's one of them. There's some things that are just not good, and you can't defend them.
So did you eventually get the Delhi belly when you were in India?
Yes, I did. It was horrible.
Does everyone just in general get it?
You can't avoid it, basically. Unless you cook your own food the whole time, and you eat only vegetarian the whole time. Otherwise, even like, you just never know what is going to cause it, because they just have different standards of hygiene. There's power cuts. It's stuff like if fridges goes out for like 6 hours and stuff is thawed, refrozen again.
Just the water as well, I guess, that they've cooked something in.
And the not washing of hands is very popular.
I know someone that got Delhi belly while they were at a silent meditation. Like, so for 6 days, they went to this sort of like, they weren't allowed to speak. And they were in this room which was pitch black for 6 days, and they got Delhi belly while they were in there.
So it's just like
so they basically spent like the first 5 days in the bathroom, just like
in darkness, not making a single noise. All you can hear is their farts throughout the whole place.
It was coming out both ends, obviously. And, it was only
that's exactly
that would be the worst. That'd be a trippy sort of experience as well, because you're not allowed to
yourself
talk.
in the dark.
How do you ask for more toilet roll? You know, if you're not allowed to speak.
No, I was quite lucky because I mean, I got it at the worst part because we were in a really nice beach resort, this kind of yoga thing in the beach, and it was really nice. But it was all right to have it then. But everybody usually gets it. When people usually get it is when they're just about to go back home.
Really?
So you've got like a 12-hour flight, and you're just like sitting in the chair, like going to the bathroom every 2 minutes. It's very fun.
The planes back from India must be like honking. People just must generally get like the deli belly, like you say, on the way home, and it's just like they know what's going down. Like that's just how these planes
They're ready
act.
for that. Yeah.
Did you see recently in the news that they had to sort of divert a plane because this man or someone, you know, I can't assume his gender, refused to stop farting, and they turned the plane round and grounded it, and then the police had to come out and take him out
Because you just wouldn't stop farting.
no, but supposedly they were like rancid farts.
Well, they must have been. Yeah, it's like the worst farts I've ever made in my life when I went to India. It was so bad.
So they stopped the plane,
Yeah.
you know, grounded it, and then they took him off by a police escort. That is insane. Oh, do we have any more? Is there any more beer? So I have an assistant today, and she is not doing her job. It's terrible. You can't get the work these days. Bloody Westerners.
Millennials.
No, she's older than that.
No, 1982, man. Anything after 1982 is counted as millennial now.
I'm a millennial as
You're
well.
a millennial too, yeah.
Why is it? I thought it was just people that were born after like 2000.
No, it's people who turning
Okay.
like
Of-
18
yeah,
of age around
okay.
that time, or I'm not sure.
I used to hate that word, but as I've sort of got more into what's going on in America and the universities, it's like, yeah, that word does exist. Like these people that are just sort of so obtuse and just don't understand anything that's going on in the world, but think they know everything. You know, that is exactly what these millennials are like. Oh, hey there.
Hello. Oh, Menabrea. Good beer.
It's our waitress for today.
Put this out of your head if you're not nice. How are you doing in the apartment?
I have a tiny bit. Oh, I get a glass.
Okay, so there's a slight water break here.
Merci.
Ah,
Merci beaucoup.
très bien. Salute.
Salute.
And you, the
I
wine
think I
wench.
still got some of this left.
Yeah, have you managed to... Do you go to the cinema at all?
Yeah.
Have you seen the Black Panther recently?
No, not yet.
Are you not a Marvel person?
I am. He's
Really?
my favorite superhero, probably. So I need to see him. Yeah. All the other ones are kind of lame. He's cool.
He's not really a superhero, though. He's just like the sort of African Batman. He does.
He's just extremely rich.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
Yeah. That's cool, though. I like Batman a lot. He's kind of the most realistic of all of them.
Come on,
It's just
really?
like, have so much money that you're just like, do you know what? I'm going to fight crime.
I think I saw an article on Reddit where they calculated how much money he would actually have would need to have all the stuff that he has in the first, the Batman Begins, and it's extortionate amounts
it's
of
like
money.
a GDP of a country.
Yeah, maybe Wakanda.
And why?
Yeah, it was really good. I quite enjoyed it actually. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about it back and forth because it's a prominent issue in society just now when it comes to sort of race and how they're portrayed in media and movies and such. So I hope that talk didn't affect how I interpreted the movie, but it seems to be not affected by it. It doesn't seem to really. It's not embracing what people are saying about it. It's just, it is this Marvel movie that's really good, and then people talk about it like justly, It's not something that was hyped up by its own self, like it's, trying to show race in a superhero movie. It's not like that. It's just, it's an amazing movie.
Yeah.
Which is good.
And also, yeah, but I have to see it. I haven't seen it. I have to see it soon.
Oh, well, I'm surprised you've not seen it already, actually.
I've got no internet at home right now. I haven't had internet since November, so I've missed out on most things.
Which we're not advocating piracy because obviously it's still in the movies.
Oh yeah,
So
okay.
you'd have
Well,
to
I
go
mean,
to
I'd probably watch it at some point in the future when it comes out on DVD.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm joking. I don't care.
There's that really funny Donald Glover skit where he's talking about they were going to cast a black Spider-Man, and he was just like, how
Yeah, because they
everybody was,
wanted him to play Spider-Man, which I thought would have been amazing.
yeah, I find Donald Glover
Yeah.
as Spider-Man would be great, and then and it was just like all these people complaining. They were just like, Spider-Man can't be black. That's ridiculous. Why would you have a black superhero?
Is that what they said?
And he was just like, well, if you get a black Spider-Man, then we want a white Shaft. It's like, he's not the superhero for black people.
Every male Mary Sue in the streets is a white Shaft, essentially. Have you ever seen Training Day? Like, what's his name in that is the white Shaft, probably. Have you seen Training Day?
Training Day is
The movie with Denzel and Mark? No, not Mark Ruffalo. The other one. The guy that looks like he shouldn't be an actor but is in Hollywood. The guy that's in Gattaca. The guy that's in Gattaca.
Ethan Hawke.
Yes, Ethan Hawke.
I don't know who Ethan Hawke is.
Oh, good, because he's a bit weird looking. He looks like someone just took a whole bunch of putty and threw it at his skeleton, and that's his face. But yeah, it's a good movie. Do you know what I've been doing recently? I've started, because we've discussed obviously BoJack Horseman, which is one of your favorite TV shows, and I started with the first season. I liked it, but I just got distracted by whatever was going around at that time, so I never got to get onto the next one. But that is a TV show that I'm starting to love again. It's brilliant. Like,
I mean, the first season he is just a massive asshole, and if you don't see beyond it, you're just like, I don't really want to watch this. He's just mean. But then as it progresses, when you get to season 2, then it's like it gets really, really, really deep. It's really deep.
I started just getting properly into it, I think, a few episodes before the last season ended. Well, the first season. And then it was like the Christmas special got released, I think, after that. Is there a Christmas special?
I wouldn't know. I have no idea about anything going on TV. And I find stuff, and I'm just like, oh, do you guys know this show? It's really cool. They're like, it's huge here. It's Game of Thrones. What the fuck?
Do you not watch Game of Thrones?
No.
Really?
I watched one season, and then it's like, you can't watch it.
You have to watch it all. Yeah.
Well, you have to pay attention. Like, basically, first season you can watch high. Second season you actually can't anymore. So I stopped watching it, because then there's people who are doing references back to another person, and then this person appears, and you're like, who's that guy again? And you should remember who he is and be like, oh my god, but I don't. So I just go. I
was the exact same. Like, the first 4 times I tried to watch the first and second season, by the third season I'd forgotten all the characters I'd been introduced to, and I'm like, who the fuck is this guy?
And then the character appears, and then he immediately dies, and it's supposed to be really significant, and you're just like, okay, cool.
And there's characters that kind of slightly look like other characters. Well, obviously they're all white with beards, and even the girls. And it's hard to sort of distinguish them. So I had to go back and forward from the first and the second series like 3 or 4 times before I eventually got into it. But it's really good. It's like, obviously, like fantasy TV show, obviously.
Mostly porn.
It gets less and less in the later seasons. Obviously, they've gotten over the, oh wow, they were showing like loads of boobs in the first season, so they got over that, And I think, what was it, Emily Clark, the main girl? Well, there's no main girl, but one of the top actresses in it. She wrote in her contract in like the later seasons that she wasn't going to do any more nudity, and I think there was an outcry, and then she was like, "Well, I'll do nudity again."
If it's didn't she do nudity, but it wasn't her body anymore. They just photoshopped her face onto someone else's, and then that's how they did it.
Yeah,
that's how they got the loophole in.
Actually, that's true. I think there was some 18-year-old model that filled in for her body.
I'll be your body.
Have you seen Altered Carbon?
I was about to say that. Oh my god, Altered Carbon is the best thing in the world, and there's tits everywhere. It's amazing.
And male tits.
There's male everything.
It's usually Joel Kinnaman, Josh Kinnaman. It's usually his tits, the main guy.
Yeah.
Do you know why he's
such a good movie?
Well, I was going to say, like, obviously, because there's the sleeves in Altered Carbon, which is a vehicle that you can a human vehicle that you can reverse if you're don't like your own one.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that with, you know, that's weird when you get younger models to play your body in a TV show like that. That is like hacking, you know, like trying to hack everyone's brain. That would never happen like 20 years ago, but that's obviously possible in altered carbon.
Such a cool thing. And the whole mad capitalist thing, that's basically what India's like. Just on a lower scale. But like that's like, it's like if you don't have money, you're just gonna die and starve and you suck.
And I assume a slightly more low tech version.
Yeah, very, very low tech version. Lots of tuk-tuks. But it's the same kind of thing. But I thought, Altered Carbon is the greatest thing I'm watching right now. It's incredible.
Yeah. I binged it. I was supposed to watch it with Laura. Like when she was in Canada, and then I was waiting for her to come back to watch it because I knew she would like love it.
You just
and I was like, I just binged it. I was like, screw this. I'm not allowed to see Black Panther till you come back, but I'll binge watch the rest of Altered Carbon. That was our deal. Yeah. It was brilliant. And then I watched that again with her when she came back because it's rewatchable easily.
Oh yeah, like it's so I don't know. I don't know if you could call it innovative, but I think it's innovative just because it really covers everything of where the future is going. Like it is the ultimate thing of being able to live forever if you have all the money in the world. That is what all the rich people want to do, is live forever and do everything that they want to do forever. And then in the end they get weird tastes, sexy stuff.
Of course.
Yeah.
You know, if you can live forever, your sort of interests will become sort of warped, and so you're going to see how far you can push it.
Yeah, and you're going to get bored of normal things and get a bit creepier and creepier and creepier until you're consensually murdering people.
It's kind of almost, I think it's sort of, it almost reflects the way people view porn as well just now. Like I know there's a bigger sort of arc to it, but in terms of porn essentially in its current sort of online format, it's only been around for maybe 20 years, I guess. And the taste and what people search for now is completely evolved, you know. I think
it's getting more and more excessive.
Yeah, like it's self-perpetuating, you know, and to sort of, but it's kind of like a chicken and egg situation, I guess. Is it people are searching for these more extreme versions of porn, and then the market has to catch up, or is the market dictating where it's going, you know? Because obviously you have this sort of like a sort of morbid fascination with what comes out. Not that I watch like copious amounts of porn, but just in like in a societal general.
I know you do.
Just talking about it now is giving me a massive idea.
Do you want to watch porn right now?
I'm watching porn on my phone as we speak. That's how far it's evolved. Christmas dinner, I was watching it on my phone while I was eating a turkey. Basting.
I totally understand. There's nothing more arousing than eating turkey.
I was basting a turkey.
Yeah, basting a turkey.
While I was basting myself.
Really, really hot.
Yeah, the turkey was really hot, actually. Anyway.
You're a master baster.
Of course.
You're really good at it.
I wonder if that's what they call someone who's like the best baster.
Best big turkey baster in the world, the master baster.
If that's not a job, it has to be a job. There was one of my friends that I went to school, just as a tangent. His name was Adam Bates, and obviously when his gran would send him a Christmas card, it had like Master Bates on his card. It was like, it's like, how do you not get this, gran?
Surely he got way worse than I did. Like I had MacPhail all the time. Like my teachers would just be like, Hugh, MacPhail, and I'm just like, I'm pretty sure that's illegal. Nobody bought into this Bates thing as much as his grandmother.
Really? Yeah. MacPhail.
Yeah, MacPhail.
Master MacPhail.
Master. Well, yeah, but
Master Master Huge Fail. Have you
heard?
Being
called huge isn't the worst, to be honest. Like
Huge Mungus.
Yeah.
Remember that guy, Humongous?
Yeah, I'll get killed humongous.
Yeah.
It's very.
Did you hear about that guy though?
Who?
Essentially, it was a guy in America who I can't remember which context it was. He was a guy that sort of stood up against the third wave feminism in America. He was just a normal day-to-day guy, and basically he was asked what his name was in front of like these sort of shouting and screaming third wave feminists, and he was like, Hugh. And they were like, "What's your real name? What's your whole name?" He's like, "Humongous." And they all just like, that's rape. You're just like raping us mentally by saying that.
The guy called Mike Litteris. There's like a newsreel, and he's just getting interviewed about, like, I don't know, there's some sort of like minor gas explosion or something somewhere in like Kansas.
There always is a minor gas explosion somewhere in the world.
No deaths, nobody gives a shit, but his name was Mike Litteris, which was the best because it was good.
And there was one. Who's the other one? On the Jackass TV show, or was it Jackass or Wild Boys? But there was a Mike Hawk. I always find that funny, even though it never really said.
Nobody
It's like
catches
Mike
on
Hawk.
straight away.
Yeah. He was like this outdoorsman. You know, he was ex sort of military, and he was like Mike Hawk. And he had like the shades on all the time, like he was literally.
What, the bicycle glasses that everybody has with baseball hats and those goatee things?
Oh, of course he had a goatee.
Yeah.
That was his goatee.
Awful.
I'm gonna have to take a break for a pee actually.
Okay. How does that?
And I'm back.
Here we go.
So just to bring it back to Altered Carbon, because I think it is really important as a TV show. You know, especially if you're a sci-fi fan, it brings all the sort of all the material that's happened in the last 40 or 50 years when it comes to sci-fi noir. You know, it brings all that together and encompasses it really well in one sort of TV show, and it's not cheesy. You know, and it basically takes Blade Runner and all these types of things and makes a legit TV show about it, I guess, you know.
Well, it's all these things that you also probably couldn't even conceive or think about maybe 40 years ago. And now it's like more important because maybe 40 years ago people weren't even thinking that. It wasn't an important part of like they're like, for example, when they wrote 1984, in 1948, their future was we're going to be watched all the time. And this is how it's going to be. It is going to be Big Brother watching us all. Yeah. And as time passed, it went a bit forward. Then this Blade Runner, their idea is that we make fake humans who work for us as slaves. And then now, with all this time that's passed, we've had all these things to think about and everything that's going on right now, the way that our society is geared. Then they're like, oh, well, that's just rich people want to live forever. Yeah. And that's how it's going to work. And you have to pay for everything. And if you don't have money, you're fucked and you're going to be in ugly old bodies.
And if you have unlimited lifetime, then you can sort of build your wealth, you know, however many lifetimes worth, which is an insane amount of wealth, which is more than anything that could probably happen now at this point in time. But if you keep perpetually expanding, you're going to make this money that's just, you can do, it's go fuck yourself
you have
money. That's
more money than a state. You can do, we have more funding. You can do whatever you want. You can get away with everything. So,
and it shows the sort of the dichotomy between it represents what's, like all good sci-fi, it represents what's going on just now in terms of,
but in a more excessive, unbelievable form that you think, oh, that's weird, I didn't think rich people would be doing that.
But the undertones of it is, it's all based on what's going on just now, and that's why people can sort of relate to it. So that's why this whole the ground level where people sort of live and walk on the actual earth are the people that are sort of the poor people, and the people that live in these skyscrapers who are the richest of the rich, their feet don't even touch, you know, the actual ground level, and that's sort of relative to what's going on just now, but it's an exaggeration of it, obviously. But it's brilliantly done. I think when you see things in past movies, you tend to bring questions up that they never really sort of go into, you know, about how it works out. But in Altered Carbon, you have questions and then they end up immediately answering them, but in a cool way that's not sort of like cheesy or anything like that. You know, because in a world where all this sort of unlimited stuff can happen, you have a question about it and then it gets answered and it's like, oh, that makes total sense. And yeah, I think that how they deal with like double sleeving as well, like when you go from one sleeve to the other, like you get a sickness. Like you can't keep, unless it's your own sort of DNA, you can't keep, you know, repeating, going from a sleeve to a sleeve to a sleeve, and that ends up having a virus, which it means is quite realistic, you know. There's no, I'm taking this from Tim Ferriss, but he says there's no such thing as a biological free lunch. You know, when you do anything like that, you have to equal it out somehow, you know, and that's why you get viruses and all these types of things.
Yeah. And the whole like space travel, the fact that you need immortality to get as far as they got, and for interstellar travel, you need to be immortal because, or like generation ships and stuff like that. But they cover it really well. It's like
true,
and like yeah, it's cool. I think I need to watch more. Unfortunately, I didn't pirate enough of it.
Have you not watched that all?
No.
Okay.
The first 3 episodes I watched, and the rest of them are corrupted. Not pirated at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't watch them.
There was a TV show that I started to watch, Britannia. Have you heard of this? It's basically when the Romans came back to Britain to sort of conquer the pagans again, because they initially tried to do it and were forced back somehow. And then I think 100 or maybe 50 years ago, 50 years later, they come back.
Yeah.
And it's about Roman Britain, essentially.
Yeah.
And them not expecting the Romans to come and take them on again. And it's about the pagan culture in Britain at that time. It's essentially like Game of Thrones, but with British paganism, you know, during the Roman era.
Instead of artificial paganism.
I've only seen the first episode, but it's fucking amazing.
Yeah?
It's really trippy. Like, there's a lot of Paisley stuff, you know, that sort of like a guitar pick, you know, the Paisley pattern. Like the kind of pinks and the purples, like there's a lot of that in the sort of credits. And it's, I don't know who the music is actually, but it's really sort of like trippy because they're all on mushrooms, obviously.
Obviously. What else would you do in pagan England? Paganism. There's no Netflix, so you might as well just eat mushrooms all the time.
Hey, mushrooms and chill. Have you never heard of that?
Yeah. Not yet.
It's the alternative to Netflix and chill. Paganism
With
and
a lot
chill.
more disappointing sexual performance, I imagine.
I don't know.
Balls.
I don't know. Probably a lot better. Yeah, on the website that I get the downloads from, there's only this one episode, so I'm still waiting for the rest to come out, even though it's on Sky Atlantic, I think. I don't have like Sky or anything like that. It's completely retarded to have that even when Netflix is around, but I think they've tried to keep these shows solely with certain Sky shows, so it'll bring like over these people to watch it.
Well, yeah, it's the like American Gods, that thing, Neil Gaiman's, they make it a TV show, and it's really good, but it's only on Amazon Prime. So you're like, I'm just not going to watch it.
Well, you're 21, you don't have Amazon Prime.
No.
I'm 31, I have Amazon,
you have Amazon Prime? Are you watching American Gods?
I got it after the fact, so like, how did we watch it? It was like, I think we were downloading it.
Yeah.
Legitly, obviously.
Yeah?
Yes.
Is that a thing? You sure?
Don't question me, boy.
That means you could give Hugh some episodes if he needs it, though.
Yeah.
That's very good. Yeah, I could need that because I only watched some of it because I don't have internet. I can't pirate anything.
Have you watched all of the American Gods?
No. I've only watched like 3 episodes or something.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's really good.
Creepy, and it's got such good lighting.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that got me the most, is the lighting. Everything is just the coolest ever.
Yeah.
It's so pleasurable. I don't know. That's kind of that works for me. The aesthetic of it really works for me.
I think it's supposed to sort of do that to your sort of endocrine system or something like that in terms of what you're seeing on the screen. I think it sort of like pleasure, your whatever it does to your sort of visual nodes, so it makes you sort of feel like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe because there is a sort of, there's technology is seen as a sort of another god that's come in, and I'm sure they've probably incorporated something like that into that, you know, to sort of make it appealing, you know, visually. But it is a brilliant. What's funny about it is it's mostly English actors that are in it as well, because the main guy, what's his name?
The character?
Yeah.
Shadow.
Shadow, who's half, who's like, what is he?
Not allowed to say.
No, he's can't say. I don't want to
Can
give.
you say?
I don't want to give any away spoilers. No, he's a light skinned guy.
Yeah.
He's like a light skinned black guy, and they call him Shadow, which is fucking terrible. And
not the most diplomatic of ways to put it across. Let's call him. He's black. Let's call him Shadow. Shout. Yeah, that'll be really good. That'll be very, very PC.
they probably thought they were going to appeal to the sort of, you know, the urbanites, but it's not happening. You know, they're more woke than they are on the face value. But yeah, it's a really good show. It gets better and better, obviously. But yeah, Shadow is an English actor.
And everybody in the thing is in English as well, no?
And the sort of the guy that sort of chooses him, the older guy, he's in English.
Yeah, he's in English shows. Yeah,
well, he was in a TV show called Lovejoy. I think it was where he was like an antiques dealer, and he was 20 something in it, and he solved crimes maybe, and that he was an antiques dealer.
Crime solving antiques dealer.
Let me see Lovejoy, because this is a quintessential British TV. Lovejoy. I thought he was like a okay. So Lovejoy is a trickster, a swindling art and antiques dealer who seems to get caught up in devious deals and get rich quick schemes. But you can't help liking Lovejoy, who has a talent for finding hidden treasures. Okay, I thought you went around solving crimes as a deal.
So it's basically English Indiana Jones.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, he's a bit more.
Wow.
That's when he was younger. That's crazy.
He nearly looks the same. So still.
He still has the same deep lines in his face.
Yeah, he does. It's like he's still 80 there. He's immortal. He's just sleeve.
So, where did you go after Belgium?
So I did Finland after Belgium.
Oh yeah, Finland.
And then Italy after Finland.
Okay, so that's the chronological order of it. Was France? No.
Yeah.
You're born in France.
Moved to Belgium.
Moved to Belgium. Moved to Finland. Then moved to Italy. Then you came back to the UK.
Well, I'd never been here before.
Okay.
It was the first time I've been to an English-speaking country was when I moved here.
And how old were you when you came here?
18.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You've only been here for I can't count math, 4 years at that point,
Is that
I guess.
4 years?
Yes.
Nearly now. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, it is nearly 4 years.
You've only been here for 4 years. That's and you speak obviously fluent English. Was it a culture shock to you when you came here?
Well, I used to spend a lot of summers in Scotland in general. I used to come here very, very often. I wasn't that surprised by a lot of things, except for drinking, which I got into very easily. Okay. So now I'm totally okay with that. Generally, partying. Scottish people are the hardest partiers ever. And when I go back to Italy to my friends and I'm like, let's go out and party. And I'm just like, let's get loads of this and this and this and this and this. And let's stay up for 16 hours and we don't have to stop and we can just go to my house afterwards. And they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But I got into that really easily as well. I'm very
I think you were probably primed for that before you came here.
Yeah, I'm ready for that. I've got a very addictive personality. I'll get into something very easily.
And obviously being in these different countries, do you see the differences in the drinking culture in the UK compared to sort of all these different sort of European places?
Well, like in Italy, people drink all day, but they're not drunk.
Yeah.
So like you get a 3-hour lunch break on work every time. Like all shops and supermarkets, everything is closed from 12 till 3, and everybody goes out for lunch together, and they go and they drink. Yeah. And they drink and drive, but they're never wasted ever. But they do that. But they always, for some reason, are totally sober.
Yeah.
even though.
But they probably don't drink the same amount, you know.
Well, I mean, they'll have like a bottle of wine at lunch, and then they'll have like a couple of glasses of wine throughout the afternoon, throughout the evening, and then they'll have a bottle of wine in the evening. But they don't binge ever, which is.
I don't think that would go down well in Scotland, like the whole 3-hour lunch break, because everyone's trying to get finished as quick as possible. You know, if a 3-hour break meant you had to work longer on the back end of it.
Yeah.
I don't think people would want it. You know, for them, it's just it's a working class mentality. Like, just work till you get, you know, so you can get home. So you can get home and then get fucked at the weekend. Go missing for 3 days.
Get pounded.
Not call your call back. I have been pounded many a time by alcohol.
And strange men in dark alleyways. Am I bringing up bad memories, Darren?
No, I was just thinking about all the times I like to tell my waitress when I'm going for a coffee when they ask me how I want my Americano. And I usually respond with black, like my men.
And they take you very seriously on that, don't they?
Especially on this street, because there's the whole language barrier. Obviously, there's a lot of Polish people that, you know, work on this street. They have restaurants and cafe shops, so it usually comes with a glare and a look and a pause for a couple of minutes, and then they're like, "Oh, okay, I got what you meant by that."
Funny story, yes.
But I got that from, you probably won't remember this. Well, you don't, because you weren't probably born at that time. But Airplane. Have you watched Airplane? Okay.
No, I have it all on a hard drive, not pirated somewhere, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, well, that is essentially where that line came from. And I think they were the air hostess was asking a little girl, she must be like 10, and it like, how do you want your tea? And it's like, strong like my men, is it? Something like that.
I think it's still black like my
Yes, black like my men. I think that's,
1980s.
yeah.
You weren't born either.
It's like 1980s it came out.
It must have been
And she's like 10.
That's actually wonderful.
And obviously there's this little boy beside her who's obviously trying to chat her up. They're the same age, and he just like stares like, what does that even mean?
Well, now I know I've got it at home. I can watch it.
Yeah, no, it is a good sort of. This is where a lot of sort of modern comedy comes from, and everyone's references is from Airplane. You know, it's a comedy classic. Is it Leslie Nielsen that's in it? Yes, and who was the Naked Gun guy?
That old dude.
Yeah,
general old dude, old white man.
He always looked old. He's
old
always
white
had
man number one.
He's always had grey hair, and that's where the Naked Gun movies is where O.J. Simpson started off in his acting career.
Was this after he murdered his girlfriend and her lover, or before?
Probably. No, it was before. That's how we could afford to kill her.
Allegedly. Sorry, allegedly.
That's
Never convicted for this.
The reason he never got convicted is because he acted in those movies.
Because he had a very good lawyer who's now given spawn to the worst people in the world.
I know, that's crazy. Like, he's out of jail now, I guess.
Yeah, he just got released for. He went and tried to rob a casino in Las Vegas and took hostages.
Do you know why he did it though?
Because he's like a massive junkie and he ran out of money.
No, I think the reason was because he was trying to steal memorabilia that people had of him when he was a football player.
Oh, right, okay.
Let me see this. I think he held up somewhere to steal the memorabilia back. Maybe he was like, I don't know.
I just thought it's because he's like obviously mad for drugs. Because I probably would be if I was him. Like, oh, I just got away with killing my girlfriend and her boyfriend. Well, let's just get fucked up.
Well, he's a strange one because he has all the hallmarks, and I've said this before in this podcast. He has all the hallmarks of someone that's experienced sort of traumatic brain injuries. You know, he's impulsive, and he's obviously
totally insane.
Killed someone or two people.
Yeah,
and yeah, he goes from one extreme to the other because everyone that meets him say he's like the nicest guy, but then we obviously know
switch.
Yeah, like quite easily, and that's indicative of someone that even just generally in playing American football, that's something you can experience. I mean, there was a recent study where they did a test on, I think it was 73 NFL football players. and 72 of them had early indicators of brain trauma, you know. And these are just
from
like
playing that sport.
yeah, just in general, like it's not something that just happens to you, like when you're constantly sort of putting your head through that, and all the hallmarks of those things of head trauma is, you know, that impulsiveness and the rashness and the, you know, to get your temper, you know, so high in this a split moment. I feel sort of not bad for him or sorry, but I feel like that's something that should be sort of looked into, because he's still doing it, you know.
And he's still fucking crazy.
Because he's out, and he's obviously going to do something again.
Well, yeah,
Because it's something that you can't get rid of. You know, it's accumulative. It's not, you know.
And also, if you're someone like as famous as him, people are just gonna assume that you're just gonna be like normal, kind of like they're like, well, you're famous, you know, you're a good role model, and then you'll be fine. Yeah. But no, he's probably gonna do some more mad shit.
No, of course he will. Waitress.
Oh, you dry.
Do we have any more?
We have 1 more minute breath.
Okay.
Could I have some water as well, please?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Take
much.
this.
You're welcome.
You've yet to get. So when Hugh arrived, he came with a pile of Reese's Pieces. Is it Reese's Cups or Reese's Pieces?
Reese's. I hope you sponsor me. I don't know what the word is, but yeah. Big cups. So not even the small 3 ones. You get one fat one full of peanut butter, and it's delicious.
That is something that I've never been into. When I was in America, I hated peanut butter until maybe 3 years ago. Just couldn't eat it.
I only discovered these like 6 months ago.
Okay. Well, you've been in like Europe. You've not been anywhere.
We just have normal chocolate. Yeah, we have real chocolate.
Yeah, dark.
And yeah, like Munchies. Well, Munchies is different in Europe because you can actually go out and just get loads of really good food all the time. Yeah. Whereas here, there's nothing available. So you're like, well, I'm just going to eat shit.
Or kebabs.
Kebabs. Oh my God, I haven't come.
Do you know the difference? Like, obviously, I think they have the same in Italy, but like they have the shops that have the kebab shops, but they're very different from the UK.
Oh my God, I hate UK kebabs. They give it to you, right? You get kebab meat in a box with chips on the side, and when you ask for a wrap, they're like, what? And they give you a piece of pita bread on the side and some hot sauce. Whereas in Europe, they stuff it in with salad, chips, meat, tomatoes, sauce, and they roll it up for you.
Well, the kebab's not the main event. It's like everything that's mixed in there is like that's all together part of it.
Kind of healthy because it's got salad in there too.
Of course, and it's probably made of better things than what is made of kebab here.
Yeah, because kebab here kind of looks like rubber.
Oh, totally. I think they did a study on like kebab meats all around the UK, and I think they found something like 3% rat meat in just in the general sort of meat across the UK. In all the tests that they did, which is fucking insane.
I've eaten too many kebabs to not have eaten rat meat, but I can just now say I've eaten rat meat now. I've eaten,
But that's like saying, oh, well, I'm a vegan, that means I'm not eating any animal products. If you eat anything that's made in a field, you've eaten rats, mice, bugs.
Oh, so many bugs.
Wasps.
Like, there's like a percentage of like, even if you just eat vegetarian food, you're still going to be eating hundreds of bugs. Yeah. Because it's all crushed up inside.
Thank you, waitress.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, that's... And they always get on their high horse as well when it comes to those types of things. They're like, well, you know, I'm not eating anything like this, but you are probably... Like, chocolate's like the big one. There's loads of bugs in chocolate, especially dark chocolate.
Great. I'm just making me think twice about eating chocolate now. I'm not that fussed. I'll eat anything. I just think as long as it's, because the whole point of veganism is like, you know, it's sustainable, but actually it's not sustainable if you don't actually know where your vegetables are coming from. Yeah. Like if you eat avocados, you're just as bad as you're eating meat. It's just as bad as taking cocaine, basically, because the people who own avocado plants. No, it's
just as bad.
Just as bad, except.
Just as
not
good.
As worth it. Totally better cocaine than avocados, man.
If you try and snort a line of avocados, it's not going to end well for anyone.
Or pepper. That doesn't work out very well either, as I found out the other day. Then no, but like the people who like the damage, the ecological damage that avocados make, and the people, like the indentured laborers who are picking them. And like there's all these villages in like Mexico and Peru and stuff where because they have to preserve vegetables and fruits like bananas in Costa Rica and shit. Not Costa Rica. Costa Rica's a cool country. You go Costa Rica. Guatemala's got the worst labor laws in the world.
Really?
Yeah, and they have these villages of all these migrant workers from different countries who have no money, and they basically they have to put bananas or any vegetables, avocados, in these preservative chemicals before they send them across to Europe for us to eat.
Yeah.
And they don't use gloves because they don't afford them, and they don't give a shit, and they don't know any better. So all their hands are like eaten away, the fingers and stuff like that, and they were all gone. And
that's crazy.
so
though.
don't eat avocados.
Well, it's the hipster's vice.
Yeah.
It's avocados. I do love avocado.
And drug lords, like cartel lords in Mexico, are buying plots of avocado land because they're making as much money selling avocados as they are selling cocaine to the United States.
Really?
Because there's so much demand for avocados that the cartels are buying avocado plots.
Do you hear that, hipsters? Your avocado addiction is directly correlating to the rise in drug lords.
So, yeah. So, just organic bio cocaine and organic bio avocados, people.
No, say avanono to avocado. That should be the slogan. You know the whole just say no thing, it's avanono. Just say avanono, kids.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything's bad now.
But you're right though. Like people assume when they're eating vegan or vegetarian that that's the best way to do these things, but it has to be sustainable. You know, doing one like monocrops and doing one thing to the earth is not good at all. You're taking out all the nutrients. And you're depriving and you're depriving that land of sort of like the diversity in its soil.
And also, if we all became vegetarians, then we'd still need an incredible amount of. I'm sure we'd be able to convert all the vegetables that we give to animals to us, but like they still chop down the Amazon rainforest to grow avocados. So at the same time, you're like, well, we're fucked.
Are those avocados being consumed around the Amazon? Probably not. They're getting sent to the UK.
The people
exactly.
around there, they're not like can't afford.
It should be. There should be more sort of a drive towards resource-based sort of cultures. You know, if you have like a rainforest, then you should be able to live off that. You know, we are in Scotland. We have fields. You know, we should be able to live off that, not bring in these avocados from nowhere that have been sort of covered in chemicals just so they can transport across the the ocean. It's crazy.
In huge planes and tankers and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, to be honest, like, sure, you can try and do better and make a difference, but with the super rich and they don't give a damn about where this world is going as long as they make money, there's nothing you can do about it. Even collectively, there's nothing we can do about it, which is why the world is going fucked up. This is why Donald Trump was elected president, even though everybody doesn't like him. And why the world is going this way, why Brexit happened, because people who actually have the power to make change don't give a damn about that. So you just have to enjoy your tiny, tiny, tiny existence and be nice as possible to everybody around you, because you are a blink in the history of this planet, and it does not matter what you do, as long as you have fun and are nice.
That's the French, Canadian, Scottish Carl Sagan right there.
And we're all going to die, so just...
Okay,
yeah.
that's the Fight Club and him coming out.
Yeah. Don't talk about the Fight Club.
Okay, sorry. Is that a movie that you have seen?
No.
I thought your shirt was inspired by Tyler Durden.
This is my dad's shirt.
It looks like it.
This is my, like, I don't know, my retiree shirt in Florida.
When any 21-year-old wears an ill-fitting shirt, I assume it's their father's.
Well, my brother actually bought me this.
How old is your brother?
30. Yeah,
yes.
30.
Okay.
Yeah, this is an Indian shirt.
Really?
This is from India. This is like...
Is it made from real-life Indians?
Yep. It's 100% Indians.
Which ones? The real ones or the fake real ones?
It's not Native Americans. That would be like inhumane.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
If you're going to get your Indians, get them from India.
Yeah, only 100% Indian fiber. There's so many of them anyway. You can just make clothes out of them.
Say I have a no to Indians. That's probably. Yeah,
If
you could.
anybody's watching this, they're gonna think I hate Indians. I do, but like
You
no.
like let's
I
sort of
hate the
clarify.
system.
You hate India,
Yeah.
but not Indians.
No, everybody's nice, but the system everywhere is shit.
Yeah.
Fuck the system, man. Just like
Well, that's the thing. When you obviously know your own system wherever you live is shit, but it's more complicated. But when you go to a country where it's sort of more basically laid out, it's obviously easier to complain about it because you can see it directly there, as opposed to having to hunt through the bullshit in the UK system. You know, it's all covered and layered, but I guess India, it's just there to see.
you can see it. It's so more evident. Like in the UK, you wouldn't be able to get away with things that happen there. I don't know. I mean, obviously they do still happen, but like, I don't know. It's just kind of really, 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 really depressing when you watch everybody struggling so hard to just feed their families, and they're also getting shat on by everybody else around them. Whereas here, people you don't see desperation on the same level, but there you see it so evidently. But for them, it's totally normal.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know what the word is. Rat race?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is like the most inhumane rat race you've ever seen. And it is just so depressing.
And how long's that those conditions in India been going on for now? Like how many years? There's like
Well, it's kind of, I mean, all countries, like all developing countries, it's going that way. But instead of, I don't know, it's just not. But the thing is that Britain in the 19th century was exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the industrialization process. That is what everybody goes through. They just, like, treat everybody like dirt. And they've got loads of cheap labor. And there's people making a load of money who separate themselves from society. But
it seems like it's different because the modern world has this level of capitalism that sort of makes it sort of more extreme when it comes to even though
the suffering.
Industrialism, when it was around, didn't have this level of capitalism.
Yeah.
So it wasn't sort of polarized as much. But now that we have those things living equally at the same time, it is just such a huge disparity, and it's a huge gap.
And the gap is getting wider and wider. But even in the UK, you start noticing it. Like, there's all these people who can do whatever they want. And, you can't. Yeah. I'm lost. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be like another 100 or so years before they figure it out. But by that time, the world's gonna be fucked anyway, so it's fine. It doesn't matter.
I mean, it is a question that I say to myself a lot and ask, and obviously it's rhetorical at this point, but is when I ask out loud on the podcast, is it something that can be changed? Is it like a massive 2-mile like oil tanker? It's going to take like at least 3 years before you can turn the thing around, and then it'll be like too late to do it by then, or is it something that we can change with voting power? Because if you're voting within the structure of the system, it's only going to be contained within that system. You need a system change for this to then be, fixed, which can't happen when you're voting within that system that needs changed.
Well, the thing is that, to be honest, I'm a bit more nihilistic on it, and I think that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And there's the people who have so much money don't give a damn if we vote for this or vote for that. It doesn't matter anyway. So you might as well just try it and enjoy and be nice to everybody, because the world is going to be never going to change. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then it's just going to implode and we're all going to die. And then everybody's going to have to try and eat their money. And it's going to be really cool because they're going to realize that paper money or virtual money that doesn't even exist for that matter is not edible, and you will be of no use when we run out of food and when there's too many people on Earth.
Have you flirted with cryptocurrencies at all, or is it something that you sort of think about?
I would, but only to buy drugs online, really.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Oh yeah, sorry. I do not condone the trade or acquisition of narcotics.
Wink.
Wink, wink. No, I've tried it, but like the Bitcoin trade in 2017 was equivalent in energy output to the energy output of the entirety of Ireland.
Yeah.
So I kind of, on a ecological standard, everybody's like, no, but it's not real money. So like, it's totally online. It means that there's no paper usage, but it actually is devastating
Yeah.
ecologically as well.
But if we truly look at it for what it actually is, I've spoke about it before slightly. It's not the actual use and like we're not adopting Bitcoin as in terms of using it as a currency. We're trading on the back of it. It's not the actual use of Bitcoin that's become popular. It's accumulating it and then selling those, you know, like on the, you know, it's like capitalism is bastardized cryptocurrency.
Well, the thing is that the people are making cryptocurrency, like people are earning cryptocurrency, but it means that then 20 people are going to have all of it, and it will have no more value anymore, and it will crash so hard because there's nobody actually using it anymore because only 20 drug dealers in the world.
But no one's really using it more in the last
use it
year.
for anything else, yeah.
Like I've seen no more people using it, even though it's become a huge commodity. People are trading off the back of it, not the actual money that they're making with it. I don't know anyone that's using Bitcoin. I know people that are trading it, but I don't know anyone that's using it. And that's how, I guess, capitalism assimilates these types of things that could be free radicals, you know, but then they just take it in and sort of bastardize it, and they make it its own, you know, instead of it actually being able to revolutionize the world. Like I thought Bitcoin could seriously be the thing that could bring freedom to the world in a sense, you know. But
instead, you can buy child pornography, guns, and drugs with it, which is exactly what we need. More child pornography. Really not enough in the world.
Imagine child porn with them firing guns and taking drugs.
Altogether?
Do you think that would be a corner of the market that people...
Well, I think that is the corner of the market when you are so rich that you've got nothing else to do but take drugs, watch child pornography, and shoot guns.
That sounds like America.
Yeah, that's exactly what America is.
What is your sort of view on America? I mean, you've came from a place where you've sort of been enveloped in the European style of living, and you know you've immersed yourself pretty well in it because you've had to live there, and you speak and you've seen several different cultures, albeit sort of European, but still they are quite different, I guess. And when you look towards America and see what's going on there, how do you sort of interpret that?
Well, I kind of interpret it as a paranoid capitalist hellhole, really.
Yeah.
In general, it's pretty much you can do what you want as long as you have enough money, and if you don't, you're left behind. And I just think it's weird. I don't know. There was so much hope with Obama, and it was like, oh, cool. Maybe there might be some can change. And now you're like, oh, fuck me. We're totally screwed. Especially when something like that can happen, and someone as totally insane as Donald Trump can be president of the United States, and people take him seriously. You really wonder what the hell is wrong with everybody in that country that voted for him, apart from being stupid, which is like kind of depressing. Can't really do anything about that. But
generally feels like a dark time in the US at this point. It could be either the end of, you know, this imperialist sort of society, you know, or it could be the birth of maybe something greater, you know.
Well, the thing is that apart from it being awful, it also means that there will be a sort of resurgence in art and culture that will be anti what's the word?
Establishment.
Anti-establishment. Instead of anti-establishment being considered racist and horrible, you'll have anti-establishment being people who actually have good ideas, and there'll be all this cool art and all this like rebellion and punky stuff, but like good punky stuff, not racist weird shit from the 70s.
It all has its place.
Yeah, that's gone. We're very glad it finished. But like actual, you know, social change. It means like we realized that in this we've gone so low that people are going to be like, holy shit, never again. And it'll be the same thing as World War II. Like World War II was terrible, but if World War II never happened, anti-Semitism would still be okay now. Yeah. Because it was only after that they realized, they were like, oh yeah, that's not okay. That was horrible. Let's not do that again until 2017, which we could start doing it again because we forgot. But if we have something like Donald Trump as president and we have all this crazy right-wing stuff, then the people who are artsy will be able to oppose it. Yeah. Cool ideas. There'll be a resurgence in meaningful music and meaningful art and stuff like that, which I'm sure is happening. And movies, like all these movies coming out now, they're so much deeper. It's not just entertainment. There's actually something behind it. And then especially the TV shows, like something like Altered Carbon, they're it's very entertaining, sure, but the whole everything about it is so clever, and it's actually like politically
on point.
Yeah, exactly. And things like what's it called?
I've never
Orange is the New Black, for example. That is another one perfect for that.
Not watched it.
I haven't either, but I know it means something.
But I'd never even thought about the sort of resurgence in art and ground level sort of like you're saying, like I didn't think it would affect it like that, but obviously it has to, because it has happened time and time again. When there's sort of political distress, there's this resurgence in art forms that are sort of questioning that and talking about it, you know, and it's a format of speaking about it. It's kind of similar to in Brazil, martial arts was outlawed in I'm not sure when the British or whoever was in Brazil, you know, however many, they pretty much they banned the Brazilians doing martial arts,
right?
Because they didn't want them to come back and then, you know, beat them up. So they hid the martial arts in dance. That's why capoeira is what it is, you know.
Oh, it's a loophole, basically.
Yeah. So
cool.
They seemed like they were dancing, but it was actually a martial art.
Okay.
And
that's really cool. I didn't know that at all. I just thought they were fucking around.
It seems like it.
They were just like, you know what? Let's dance and kick each other in the face at the same time.
And but it's more formatted, because obviously it's like a tempo orientated. You strike, I strike. You know. But they hid it deep within the dance, and I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Like when these things happen, like when you're repressed in any way, you hide your true motivations within art. You know, like
exactly.
And that's
in your poetry and paintings and everything.
But you can do it in a public format, you know, and that's what it's brilliant about it, I guess.
And it's exactly what it is, and it's gonna be. It should change it all. It should make it so much better. Like like for example, with the whole thing of like 70s and 80s. And all that, like protesting and things like that, is just going to come back again, except hopefully more sophisticated. And, you know, and also the great thing about Trump being elected is that until now people have thought that everything was okay, when everything is not okay in America. Everything is always wrong. And until then, people have just assumed that it was fine. And that's what the problem with Hillary Clinton is, that his thing was making America great again. And her fucking slogan was, America's already great, which is not right at all. It's bullshit. America is seriously flawed, and with Trump becoming elected, everybody's realized that there are so many changes that need to be made that he's not doing, which means that the people who actually want the change are like, even Republicans are opposed to him and are like, there's some things that are wrong, even though they're a bunch of rich white assholes. So
her campaign was like the biggest flaming bag of shit.
Oh my god. The only good thing she did was featuring in Broad City. That was the best thing she's ever done. That was it. That's all. Apart from that, but also the thing is about her is that she also just represents everything that's wrong with America too. Apart from he might be vocal about it, but she's
sneaky.
She's sneaky as fuck.
She's a criminal.
Runs security services.
She's a criminal.
Embezzles money and probably puts them in foreign bank accounts. But we know about him doing this, but we don't know her about doing this. She's kind of pretending like she isn't, which is just as bad.
No, I think if she'd gotten power, it just would have been. I've heard people describe it like this before, and saying that it would have just been business as usual if she had got into power.
It would have just been exactly the same. America would still be flawed. At least now people are having to confront things, and people are being so much more. They're empowering it so much more.
Like I think with Trump, people have to face either, you know, their viewpoints in a way, and they have to sort of see how they can change what's going on, so something like him coming into power doesn't happen again. You know, but not just someone like Hillary to get in where it's business as usual. Actually affect change by him coming in, you know.
Yeah, because there's going to be a backlash against him, because he was a reaction against what everybody perceived as some lefty bullshit, which is ridiculous. And then there's going to be a backlash against him, which means that things are going to change even more in empowering everybody who isn't empowered. Especially women and black people who are forgotten in America. And now since he's become empowered, it's been this whole Me Too thing, which is a lot to do with him, especially because he's one of those people.
What? You don't think he was right when he said touch her pussy, grab her pussy?
Grab her by the pussy?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Well, he's part of it. Like, he's part of everything that's wrong. And he's kind of passive racism.
He represents that in one single position of power, you know, and it's
wealthy,
him being
stupid,
ginger,
rapey, racist,
head transplant, hair transplant.
Yeah, all of it, everything wrong with America in one man, and everybody's realizing it finally now, which is great.
It probably is a good sort of conversational. It probably forces people who wouldn't normally talk about that sort of stuff to then discuss it, because someone who is in power like Trump, that is very polarizing. You know, there's people who adamantly, you know, follow him, and there's a young group of guys who are part of, you know, like your age, 21 in America, that, you know, just follow him relentlessly. And then there's this sort of side of it where the Me Too side of it comes in, and that's another aspect that people are forced to sort of talk about, because he is in power and that's something he represents.
Yeah.
Which is good, you know, I guess, but it has taken someone like him to be in power for that to come about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would this conversation came about if Obama was in power?
Well, no, because everybody assumed that everything was okay, because they were like, well, we've got a black president, therefore everything's fine. There's nothing wrong with this country. But now everybody's realized that there's so much wrong with it, and they really need to change it.
I thought Obama was the guy, you know, I thought that was the guy to affect social change. And it was, I think he was disheartened by what he couldn't accomplish in his sort of 8 years in office. And
There was so much opposition to him.
And I think he sort of highlighted that when you're in office, there's not much you can do to change the actual direction of where the government's going. You know, it's just, it's its own entity, and you're just basically the front man.
Yeah.
And
You're
I think
a spokesman for the government, but you can't actually get any of your points across because everybody behind doesn't want change. All the rich people who actually control the country don't actually want change.
No.
Don't give a shit.
No. And I watched him recently on, like, David Letterman started doing interviews on Netflix.
Yeah. Oh,
But-
yeah.
But
That's
it's
cool.
just him with his giant, like, Noah beard, you know, obviously. And he interviews Obama. I think it's like a 2-part special on stage. And I was sort of taken back by how intelligent Obama is, and how sort of he's aware of everything that's thought about him and how he thinks and how that could be perceived.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe that he could do some of the things that were done under his term knowingly. You know, I think it was just...
Well, he knew that there were some things he would never be able to achieve if he tried. But it's the same. It's also to do with, like, when you're used to a system as a society or a nationality or whatever, that it will perpetuate itself anyway. And it doesn't matter if you try to change it significantly. Like, for example, Russia, whether it's been Tsarist Russia, Soviet Russia, or Putin's Russia, the system of government has been exactly the same.
Yeah.
A bunch of rich people right at the top who control everything, and whether they've been left wing or right wing, everybody else lives the same way. And like South Africa, like whether it's been white minority rule or majority rule, they still, apart from evidently, there's not the apartheid, which is awful.
Yeah.
There's
No, of
not
course.
there's actual laws that separate people. But then now the people who've taken power since white minority rule are just acting in the same way. They just try to make money for themselves, and they separate themselves, and they build themselves nice big houses with fences and stuff like that.
Well, there was something in the news today that the government in South Africa was saying that they were taking lands off of farmers to give them
they're
back to
gonna
the people.
Give it back to the people, but
Which is like... It's kind of indicative of what's going on in America slightly, where something's happened in the past and it's something that's going to set a people back by however many years. But the way to get around that isn't then to have power and then do that to the race that's done that to you. It's just, it's a tough
It's a bit tit for
situation,
tat.
you know.
I don't think it will. I mean, it's a diversified economy. Like in Zimbabwe, when they took away all the white farmer land, it just destroyed the economy because that was
Really?
the only thing they relied on.
Wow.
But
But is
in
that the
South-
right solution, though, to be based solely on, you know, this
Well,
this
that's
one
but
economy, though?
That's the thing, is they just perpetuate the same system
Yeah.
again. They don't really like. But then they didn't realize that it totally Also, they had a war in the Congo that ruined their money as well. But in South Africa, they've got a diversified enough economy for them to, if they did do that, it would probably be fine. But the problem is that it's to do with capitalism as well. I don't think massive tracts of land being owned by one person is healthy, but it makes money.
Yeah.
And they are selling their food. Maybe they're not selling their food to locals, but they're selling their food, and it's making the economy go. I don't believe in this, but if this is how the system is, it's how the system works. It's better-ish, but taking away all this land They would take away all the tracts of land from one white farmer, and they give it to all their party members and former soldiers. They do subsistence farming so they can feed themselves, which means they've taken away a whole part of the economy, which means that they're relying on that, which is bullshit, which means in South Africa that won't happen because they've got so much else going on. But they still have this sort of colonial attitude that South Africa, the only purpose it exists is to export minerals to other countries. They don't make anything themselves. They don't produce steel. They don't use their minerals and their diamonds and their golds. They just sell them to other countries. They're just like, it's like a vacuum. And that's just how they just have to change that, but they don't want to. Like, that's because they're making money. The people in government, whether they've been white or they've been since the end of apartheid, they still are making money in the same way, and they don't care. That's their only purpose.
I think I saw a great documentary on Netflix, and it was essentially there was a British oil, maybe British or some Norwegian oil company that went into the coast off of Africa, and they'd found this massive like cave or whatever they call it, like a big sort of cavern of oil off the coast of Africa. And obviously you just assume that obviously Africa is going to get this oil and the money from it, but they just screwed everyone, you know, that was part of this, that was from South Africa, or I can't remember where exactly the coast was, but they had lawyers to sort of battle it out, because these people just went in, took the oil out of that land and didn't pay anything towards the sort of the government that was close to it.
You just have to pay the president and his pals, and then you pay them personally, and then you don't have to pay any tariffs, you don't have to pay any taxes, you can just pay like one guy. So for example, Angola, Luanda in Angola is the most expensive city in the world to live in.
Really?
But the rest of the country is in total poverty.
That's crazy.
Because oil companies pay all the government people and all their cronies and all their pals money personally to extract the oil. They make a shit ton of money. They've got all these expats living in this one city that are buying and trading oil and digging up whatever, whatever they do, drill, that's the one.
Digging up money.
But everybody else is starving.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. And it's the most expensive city to live in, even though it's like a third world country. Like, it's fucking, and the same in like Equatorial Guinea. They've all got the same problems. They just pay 3 or 4 people millions of pounds, personal deal, and the rest of the country get skipped out totally. And there's no taxes, no tariffs, and they just get to take all the mineral wealth out.
Well, we're kind of close to wrapping up, so we probably should end this on a slightly higher note. I've started asking people this.
Sorry to depress you all.
I've been asking people this, and they're sort of recently on the podcast, but one of your favorite books that you've read recently, or one of your all-time sort of favorite books?
So in general, I just think all of Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels are amazing. Okay. So good. Even though they're meant to be for kids, I can still read them now, and they're phenomenal. But still on
capitalism and how it sucks.
Depressing note, I just read this book called Congo by David van Rijbroek, who is a Belgian, but his father used to work in the Congo back when it was a colony.
I've heard the name before.
And it's he's a playwright and like a playwright. He does theater, but he wrote a history book. It's really cool, and it's all to do with, instead of like when you read a history book, especially on something like Africa or Asia, it's always written, it's a white man's book, and it's his perception of it.
Of course.
What he did was all of his sources are first person local sources. So he went to Congo and he interviewed people as old as 100 years old who somehow survived, who saw Stanley first arriving and the first white people arriving, and going all the way to people like all the way through the last, since like 1880 to now, all first person sources, all Congolese sources, instead of using books that have been written or sources written by people who were colonizers and who had flawed opinions of the people. Yeah. And it's horrible, but it is all-encompassing of all the good things and all the bad things about the Congo, and it is incredibly well written. And it's also, because he's a playwright, it takes a lot to do with the presentation of it and the scene that you
it's
see.
Written thematically. So,
and it is an amazing book. And I know everything about the Congo now. For some reason.
It sounds similar to there's a book by Howard Zinn called The People's History of the United States. And he writes the history from the, you know, when the conquistadors arrived in South America till 9/11, he writes it from the first-hand accounts. So it's from the natives that he gets all his information when it's early on, and then when he gets through to the sort of modern day, it's the same sort of like it's all people who were on the ground and experienced it.
Because they know the best.
Yeah.
They know exactly what happened, but when you read it in a book, it doesn't mean anything to you the same way that when you've actually experienced it firsthand, you know, so...
Okay, so favorite movie or movie that you've seen recently?
Birdman.
Okay, yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah,
Hell
Birdman.
yeah.
I watched Birdman recently for the first time, and I watched it twice recently. Actually, it is probably one of the best movies. Like, it's just so funny, so clever.
Like the cinematography on that is brilliant, and the sort of the long shot. I mean, I know it was sort of split up digitally, and they pieced it together, but the format of it being like the one long shot, it was all shot in that one scene.
Yeah, it's just one.
It's brilliant.
It's following around, and it's so surreal, but it also covers like alcoholism and suicide in such a lovely way that you kind of, obviously it's ridiculous, but it's also really nice, and the voice in his head and the what's the word, self-deprecating and beating himself up and all that. It's covered so nicely and funnily.
And who else to play that? Like Michael Keaton, who was like Batman, you know, the Batman, and obviously
the Batman.
Yeah, like the first one. So obviously that's why it ties into him playing, you know, Birdman, because it was the resurgence in his career later on in his life after playing such an iconic, you know, character.
Oh, I didn't know that, but that's cool.
He was the Batman. You have to watch them. Like the Batman and Batman Returns is the first ones. Brilliant. Watch them.
And then
and and one of your favorite all-time quotes.
All-time quotes. Oh. I'm not sure. I never really pay attention to quotes.
Or you can just quote yourself, maybe.
That would be quite narcissistic, I think.
I think that's a quote right there.
Quoting yourself is narcissistic. There we go. Meta.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to end on. Thanks for coming on, man. Can people find you on any form of social media that you find acceptable?
I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
And Hugleby.
Okay.
Which is hard to spell.
Hugleby.
Hugleby, yeah.
Is that what?
Huglebe. It's my nickname.
Oh, okay.
It is longer than my name.
Is that not the ship that Darwin came to the Galapagos on?
That's a better quote than Don.
Anyway, find him on Hugleby, and you can find me anywhere. Peace out. Thanks for coming on, man.
It's been really fun.